And we're doing this in a digital way. And therefore, there are slight changes now that we may want to adjust to. Please remember that if any questions, you can ask questions at any time. Just get on into the chat and I will pick it up and try to answer it as we go along. As interactive as we can be, we will try to do so through the chat. But more importantly, I think coming out of today, I would like you to appreciate the importance of record keeping and cash management to your business. Creative TT, FashionTT, and Netco got together and put a program such as this one to you all because of the importance of record keeping and cash management to your business. For some of you, you already have your business registered. You're either a sole trader or limited liability company. And in that way, you are running a business. But I am certain for some of you, that might not be the case. Some of you are good at what you do. You are good at putting that thread and cloth together and making some great creation. And you are not yet happy with how you keep the records of your business. And perhaps that's why you're here this morning. At the end of the morning, I trust that when you are finished with this seminar, you fully appreciate the importance of keeping records. You fully appreciate how to keep records, what records to keep, and then how you can use those records to ensure that you understand the business that you're in. In understanding that business, there are many of you this morning. I think we started at, I saw 12, 15, and the numbers keep going up. So we'll go ahead as we go. Just for your information, your presenter, myself, I run my own small business. I call it small, but no business is really small. Business is a business. I'm not inclined to talk about small business. I've been doing so for quite some time, and I've worked both in the public and private sector. And given my interest in governance and strategy and entrepreneurship, I work with small and micro enterprise business in the main to help them sort their business out. So the purpose this morning is for us to look at this thing called record keeping and cash management. And I really wonder how many of you, having started the business, you're selling your business, your work, and you're doing the business, but you do not have the information in a manner that provides you with information as to how the business is being run, but at the same time will be compliant with what the requirements of the law says, and at the same time be able to provide information to those persons who maybe want to be looking at your business for decision-making purposes. So we have a lot to go through, and I will take it very slowly. Any questions you have, please put it into the chat. The objective of this session, we want to look at what comprises this thing called business records. We want to understand what is record keeping in an accounting sense and why is that important for business. Accountants to the business are like a doctor to the business. The doctor will understand what your ailments would be, what your concerns might be, and based on that discussion and assessment of you, he will then make his recommendation. Similarly, the accountant is that person who looks at the numbers within your business and be able to tell you or advise you as to what you ought to be doing, what needs to be done in whatever manner, and perhaps what you should be concerned about in running the business. When cash is available, when cash is not available, these things is what will happen when the accountant is in place to guide you. For many of you who are running your small business, I will also advise you, you can't be all things to all people. And therefore, you know what you're good at, then yes, you do that. You learn and you understand the things that you need to know. You must understand them. And therefore, it's important that you understand the accounting side of your business and leave the professional accountant or the bookkeeper to put it together for you in the manner that is required from a professional point of view. I say this to say to you that at some point in time in the journey of your business, you will be going to a banker. You'll be going to a banker for finance, or you'll be going to someone to assist your business in some way, and therefore you have to represent your business. And the way you represent your business well is by presenting in a professional manner the documentation that the accountants, the bankers, and those persons that will require in a manner they will understand. To do it any other way makes it difficult. You want to understand what good record keeping can do, and it can do a lot for you to understand that business. As a doctor, I look at you, I see your red eye, I see your challenges, and I can assess exactly what's going on with you. You may tell me I have a headache. You may say something, and based on what you said and what I see as a doctor, I can determine what your challenges might be. Similarly, you need to look at the numbers in your business to understand exactly what the challenges are in your business. Don't wait for many people who, quite recently, as you would have realized, the government today, given the circumstances that we're in, need to give help to small and micro enterprise business. Two things come out quite easily. One, your business needs to be registered. And two, you need to be compliant with the statutory requirements that will be necessary for your business to run. Nobody will get a grant or some benefit through the government unless the government has evidence that you are compliant with the laws. So that for good record keeping, once you have that your records in a good manner and a manner that's usable and compliant, you can then present it and participate in whatever grants or benefits that might be out there for your business. We want to identify steps in a record keeping cycle. But it's a cycle that what you find in any business is every 12 months, we want to look at what has happened in the last 12 months. At the same time, we can look at what's happening every quarter. We can look at what's happening every 6 months. But generally, from a business point of view, we would want to look at what happened in the last 12 months. So generally for sole traders, and many of you might be sole traders, that 12-month period, January to December, we want to look at what happened in 2019. And I ask myself, how many of you know how much money you made in total? How much did you spend? How much what was your profit? And then we can discuss all the other things in terms of your taxes and your benefits, etc. And then we want to look at 6 steps, 6 simple steps on how we keep records. And then that way, if you follow these steps, I think you'll be in a very, very good place to deal with things. So from that point of view now, let's look at what are business records. Many of you have them. How important they are. You're a sole trader, your certificate of business registration is an important business record that must be kept on a permanent basis. Please do not laminate it. Please do not laminate it because it is a legal document and will require the different stages for however your business develops. If you're limited liability, you'll have board minutes, meetings of the directors of the business and the discussions and agreements as to how things have been determined. For any kind of business, the loan agreements or the trade agreements that you have, your agreements with suppliers, your credit arrangements that you have in place, those documents are important. Your tax returns. Your tax returns are also important. Your employee data, employee records, customer records, and of course, internal. You scan, for those of you I've seen here, that you scan your certificate of business registration. I have no problem in scanning it. You're scanning it for a purpose. You scan it. You have it on your Dropbox, or you email to somebody. But the original certificate must be kept safely, but not laminated. So what you can do, if you go to a stationery store, you can buy these plastic jackets that protect the document. Yeah, that will help you to keep it for a long time, and it will not suffer from the environmental issues around you in terms of deteriorating and things of that nature. For those of you who want to put it up on some kind of frame and put it up on a wall, you photocopy it, you can color photocopy it if you wish, and put it into the frame. But the original document should be kept secure and safe, not laminated and not punched in any way, with punch holes in it to file it and those things. You don't do those things to legal documents. Your tax returns are important, and the tax returns, you should also have that record. So many of you are sole traders, and even the businesses that you are in today, I ask myself how many of you all have filed your recent tax returns. Some of you are working, yes, I do agree, working in, let's say, in some other establishment, and what you do now is basically a sideline, and therefore for the tax purposes, you're dealing with the issue of your employment. But from a business point of view, how many of you are filing your tax returns for your business? We will talk about that before the day is out, and you will see the importance of so doing. Of course, you want to look at customer records. I remember when I did this program some time back, and we asked the class about their customer records. What customer records do you all have? Do you know the name, address, contact number, email address, date of birth of your customers? Anybody who walks through your door as a customer and buys something from you, you ought to have the information about it. You all are in the fashion industry, and therefore one would expect. I remember for myself, as a young man growing up, the tailor around the corner, he had his big notebook with your name in it and all your measurements as you go along, and you could go back 2, 3, 4, 5 months, 2 years, whatever it is, and you would flick the book and get your details of your dimensions and be able to, you got fat or you got thin, and then design and build for you a good outfit. It's important, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that you all have records of your customers. And I will talk about that in more detail, because your customer and the understanding of your customer is going to be very important going forward. When I say going forward, post-COVID-19, and talk about that at the end of this presentation for you to understand the importance of record keeping in the current business environment that we're in. In terms of internal records and accounting records, it's important that any business have those records to hand and be able to use them effectively, and we'll talk about how we use them. So the question is this whole thing of record keeping. What therefore is record keeping in the current environment? Record keeping is a system of accounting and that you're processing data for events in the real world, turning it into usable information that users can make informed decisions. Accounting records, on the other hand, provides information and evidence based on the preparation of what we call financial statements. Just hold for this point. All of you who are now either sole traders or limited liability companies ought to be putting in place and having your records, an income and expenditure statement on your business. Income and expenditure statement on your business. So the question is, how many of you know how much money you made last year, how much you spent, and what was your profit? Now, if I was in a class, we could all jump in and say yes, no, maybe, but maybe in the chat, could some of you indicate where you all are with your financials? Do you know your income at this point in time? And as we go along, I will show you how you can get to the answer of your income. Some of you do. So you know what happened last month, you know what happened the month before. That's good to know. You must be aware of the information that you have with regard to the business and what that business information means to you. What do these financial statements that we have tell us? The end game is to come to what we call financial statements. That's the end game. It will tell us the income generated from the business, how much money we made. It can also tell us how much is owed and to whom it might be owed to. How much funds do we have access to based on the data that we now see? How often you are turning over your stock? In the business that you all are in, you're buying cloth, you're buying supplies. How fast are these things turning over for you? I do recall quite recently, again, based on what was happening, many people are taking little snippets of cloth that they have and now making masks. Some people are selling it at different prices. Some people are donating it. But what even that simple way of running your business, you ought to be aware of your cost. You ought to be aware of your expenditure, what you're expending on, and also what you're earning with regard to these things. How often is stock turnover, and then you want to know if you're profitable or not. But then in running the business, you will need to be aware of what are the indicators. So for some of you, you're saying that, yes, you have some information and you may sometimes fall short in the information that you're having. Let me just give you some advice on that. The question here is, and the question put to me, is that sometimes you are good with the information that you are recording, and sometimes you're not so good with the information. The advice would be that you establish a ritual for recording and doing the work of putting these documents together. You ought not to be doing it on the basis that, you know, tomorrow, next week, I'll get around to it. What you need to be doing is saying to yourself at the end of a week or the beginning of a week, be it an afternoon or some private time, I will sit down and do this at this time, and get in the habit of doing it. Things become learned as you do them repetitively, and you'll find you'll get accustomed to it. You know what you have to do, and become quite easy for you. So let's try that. Try it from the point of view of set a date and a time, be it in the afternoon when things are quiet, late into the night. For some of you who are night people, you can work into the night and put the paperwork together, because it's important for you to have that information, and you'll see it as we go along. The other reason why we want to know about this record keeping, because from a business point of view, we have the ability to project what we are likely to be making. And if we can project what we're making, we can then have budgets, be able to plan, and be able to execute on the things that we want as we desire them to happen. The numbers, based on all the records gathered, provides us with information that we can look at our business, and based on whatever data we have, we can also look at other businesses and see and have an inclination as to how they're performing. It gives us some degree of competitive understanding in the industry that we're in. Again, in the fashion industry today, lots of things are changing. And as we go into a new dimension, if you look at how, let's say, the grocery stores are now changing and the pharmacies are now changing, and you have curbside pickup and all those dimensions of new ways of doing business, we have to measure them and understand them and cost them out so that we know exactly what is happening. In the industry that you're in the fashion industry, lots of things are happening. You need to gear yourselves up for the whole issue of competition. From the point of view that you have a situation, let's say now coming out of what is happening, more persons will be more inclined to be looking at cheaper pricing and bargaining for the final product and the final price. If you are to bargain, it means that somebody says to you, hey, we are buying this thing at $10, or you're buying it at $100, and could you do less than that? Once you have the records in your business, you can appreciate how you can reduce your price, still be profitable for the benefits of the business. A key important factor in understanding record keeping and cash management. So what are the objectives? The objective of record keeping would be that we know who owns the assets of the business. We have proof of ownership. We have the sense of we have liabilities, and we also have what we call owner's equity. My point would be, when you look at the information for record keeping, many of you have equipment, many of you would have owned assets that you use for the business, the sewing machine, the design board, all those things are assets of the business. And you will need to have those recorded and documented in a particular manner, which we'll explain shortly, and I'll show you why that's important to do. You want to look at this whole evidence of what liabilities you have created. And you want to look at how your equity in that business is improving or declining. The whole important thing about what we are doing is validating and verifying the integrity of the financial statements that are being presented. Many people need to appreciate that your bankers, for example, know exactly how you are running the business based on the flow of funds that they are seeing. Somebody has their mic on. Could they mute their mic, please? From a banker's point of view, as you put money into the bank and they are seeing it, you present them with financial statements. They match what information they have about you as in the bank, and they can determine whether or not the financial statements that you have provided are made up, they're real and supported by the evidence that they have, and they can either rely on them or not rely on them. The bankers already have that information. So it's important that when you present your financial information to them, you ensure that it is properly presented and it is based on fact. Let me also say this to you. As we go along in this work, you'll begin to realize that the records of your business are so important. So when somebody buys from you, the important thing is not that you collect the money and you hand over the goods. There are other factors inside that we will want to address. But one of the important things that you have to consider is when you collect money in terms of sales of your business, do not right pocket, what we call right pocket, left pocket. You collect the money in one pocket and you spend it out in the next pocket. What you need to be doing is ensuring that the money that you collect goes into your bank so that your banker sees the quantum of money that you're turning over and understands how your business is growing. If you go to the bank and you want financing for something, what the banker is looking at is how much cash is this business turning over. Hence the reason, the importance of you having the record, documenting money received to be able to have confidence in your financial statements. That's one aspect of it. But the other aspect that's also equally important is that you are putting money into the bank so that the banker can see and understand and tie it back and link it back, what he sees in the bank to what he's seeing in your financial statements that makes sense to him. Sometimes you go to the bank and you wonder why the banks are hesitant to deal with you. They're hesitant to deal with you sometimes because what you're presenting and what they know from what the information that they have does not easily gel. And they wouldn't tell you that. They wouldn't want to come out and say to you, just don't add up. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it is important for you to make sure that the information presented, you can verify and validate based on the records that you are keeping. The importance of record keeping, the importance of keeping records such that it provides some degree of insight on the operations of the business and how it is structured. In the case of a sole trader, we clearly and we understand that the sole trader is an individual, and that individual has capital injected into the business. He spends money, he earns money. At the same time, he builds his capital base. On a limited liability basis, if your entity is limited liability, then we look at how the shareholding is and how many shares you have and how that is distributed. And we look to see how you're profitable and then how shares, what shares they have, what profits are earned, how the business is being run. We use the information to make predictions based on whatever trending in the marketplace at the time. And today, when we look at many businesses, there is a concern. For many of us, we running the business, one day everything is nice and smooth, and then all of a sudden we are not to open the business. What happens? What is important now? For many small enterprises, are you registered? Some people are scrambling now to register because why? They want access to a government grant. You have to be registered. Are you paying national insurance if you are employed? Or from a tax point of view, are you paying your health surcharge, or are you paying your relevant taxes based on this? So, simple question to you all now. How many of you are sole traders and are not employed that are paying health surcharge? For many of you, and many times when we have that interaction in the classroom, some people are not paying it. And it's a simple transaction, simple payment to be made. And we talk about that as we go forward in terms of all the tax exposure that you have and how you need to comply with them. The information used to compare and reward employees. Some of you have employees. And for those of you who have employees, the importance of record keeping for your employees, how you compensate them, and how you reward them otherwise based on performance is important information to have. And we'll again get into more detail. And the other importance of having record keeping is basically a check and a balance. It's like an internal audit. You can go through the documentation that you have, the records that you're keeping, check to make sure that things are properly done, verified, and then put together the relevant financial statements to be able to represent the business properly. The record keeping, what does it do really? It's a filter. We're collecting information, we are filtering out and sorting it out and allocating it properly in some process that we create documents and evidence and information that we can now distribute to different persons, including ourselves. And for what purpose? Simply for decision making in the business. When I asked the question of you a little while ago as to how many of you know how much money you employed, how much money you made last year, it's important for you to understand that. It's important to know whether I'm making money or not. The whole issue of commitments that you have as a business owner, it's crucially important. From a question raised now, the question is, can a self-employed person pay national insurance for themselves and potential employees? If you are self-employed, meaning that you are self-employed sole trader, you are not required to pay national insurance under certain circumstances. Normally, you do not pay national insurance. If you were employed before and you go into your sole tradership, by arrangements made with the National Insurance Board, you can make those contributions for perhaps a 12-month period, 12 to 18-month period. But that's based on arrangement with national insurance you are previously contributing, and there's a short hiatus when you are now sorting out your business. You want that to happen, you have to go in and discuss with them. But as it is, a sole trader does not contribute to national insurance, but the sole trader business, if we employ people in the business, then you have to pay national insurance for the people who you employ. The question is, so that I want to go back over that again. If I am a sole trader, registered sole trader business, as a sole trader, I do not pay national insurance. Some of you are working and employed elsewhere, and national insurance is paid there for you. Yes, because you are employed elsewhere. You work with the government, they will pay the national insurance for you. You work with a private company, they will pay national insurance for you. But you as a sole trader, you, the individual sole trader, would not be paying national insurance. Let me just take one step further. What is the advice to you? As a sole trader, what you ought to be doing is looking after your own future from the point of view that you would need to invest in your own pension support. And therefore, that is something you can do to deal with the issue of your future earnings. And I will talk to you about how that implicates for your taxes also later. What is the consequence of not doing it? What are the ramifications for not paying your PAYE as you pay as you earn, or ramifications for not paying it? Very simple. Penalties and interest that would make cause your business to fail. Or on the other hand, You're not doing it. Here's what's happening. Let's bring this down to reality today. The government of Trinidad and Tobago has given grants to self-employed persons, meaning if you are a sole trader running a sole trader business, and because of what is happening in the environment now, things are not working properly, you can apply and get some grant benefit. But you know something? There are some persons who are working for limited liability companies, and those companies are not paying their national insurance. Therefore, when you're not paying a national insurance, here's what is going to happen. Those, as an employee, I will require to get the grant. Because if you as an employer not paying me, then my access to the grant is what I'm looking for. The form that is put out there for people to fill out to get access to the grant requires that your employer indicates his business, his national insurance number, and information pertinent to the business that you're working for, not sole trader. I want to distinguish between if you're employed and you running a limited liability business on your own right and not paying national insurance. If that form is submitted to the National Insurance or Ministry of Social Development and you are not making any contributions for your employees, you then become liable for those contributions. That's how they will find you out. We have a penchant for somehow not wanting to do the right things. There's a view that says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and the rest is yours. Therefore, what you do in running the business, you meet the requirements of the law, and then the rest is yours. Do what you need to do with the rest. So the ramifications for not paying, if you're entitled to PAYE. Now, I see the question here is, what is the ramification for not paying PAYE? PAYE is pay as you earn. And therefore, your employer, if you are employed in the business, in a business that's limited liability, the employer is taking out the PAYE deductions for you. If he's not doing that, then somewhere in the journey, he will have the liability of paying it for you because he will be called upon to pay it. He's required to deduct it from you. If you, on the other hand, are not paying it, you can have also issues going there. Let's come from a sole trader point of view, because I'm assuming many of you are sole traders in your business. You need to be paying your income tax. Now, it's not PAYE in this case, it's income tax, because it's not pay as you earn in terms of an employee. It is income tax. And therefore, at the end of any year in your business, you have a number of things to be looking after. On a quarterly basis, you need to look after meeting your PAYE, not PAYE, but meeting your levies, business levy and green fund levy on a quarterly basis. Quarter meaning at the end of March, at the end of June, at the end of September, at the end of December. You have to file your tax return and pay whatever taxes that you have to pay, right? So that from a business point of view, therefore, good record keeping helps you to determine and make the relevant payments to the relevant statutory authorities, but know what you earn and what you make for yourself is yours. Let me also say one thing as I'm on this matter. We have this view that, we're not paying these things, or we shouldn't be paying these things. We need to understand that as an individual, let's say as a sole trader, as many of you might be, you have to pay your health surcharge, but you don't get into the realm of taxes until you pass a certain threshold. The threshold is $72,000 per annum net profit. I repeat that. You do not start contemplating the payment of taxes until you get to that $72,000 net profit, meaning that your income minus your expenses, and you're doing your tax returns as a business, you're looking at your net profit position. So you can earn a net profit of $72,000, and at that point you start paying taxes. But you can also extend that as a sole trader. You can also extend that by putting in place your own personal pension arrangements, meaning that because you're not, as a sole trader that is, and you're not employed elsewhere, and therefore you're not under the national insurance framework, you are a sole trader, what you ought to be doing is getting what I call these private pension arrangements. I don't advocate an insurance company because the insurance company arrangements tend to be, I must make this payment every month, and I must. As an employed person, you will all appreciate you don't know what you're making every month. And therefore, you want to be flexible in your arrangements. So the banks have these pension plan arrangements. In the case of Republic Bank, it's tax incentive savings plan. In the case of FCB, it's tax advantage. In the case of RBC, it's future cash. And of course, others may have it in their own way. Access those facilities, make contributions to those arrangements, and you can add a further $50,000 onto that $72,000 and do not pay any income tax. Let me repeat that slowly so that you understand. I am saying to you, as sole trader businesses, you are in a position that your income minus your expenditure, that net position, subject to the adjustments that we make as accountants and tax individuals for tax purposes, you can get to $72,000 and not pay taxes because you have something called personal allowance. And that personal allowance gives you that position. So with that personal allowance, I pay no taxes. But I can enhance that by making a contribution to a private pension account of what we call a personal annuity. I am advising that the banks have personal annuity pension plans that you can access, join, and pay up to the maximum and still pay no further taxes. So please look at that. The question I have here is, what is the requirement for a sole trader for the grant of tax and pay as you earn since no NIS payments? What is the requirement of a sole trader? A sole trader, let me go over this again for the understanding. Because you are a sole trader, you ought to be paying income tax, health surcharge, and your business levies and green fund levy based on your sole trader business. I repeat that. As a sole trader, you ought to be paying income tax, health surcharge, green fund levy, and business levy based on your business. You do not have to pay national insurance. National insurance is if I am an employee with somebody in a limited liability company where I'm working for someone and you're required to pay national insurance then. All right, I trust that answers that question. Do we file once below $72,000? As an employee in a limited liability company, you need not file any tax returns as an employee in a limited liability company. But all of you operating a sole trader business, need to be filing your income tax on an annual basis by the 30th of April. By the 30th of April, you need to be filing your income tax because you are a sole trader business. You're running a business as a sole trader. You're required, therefore, to do the income and expenditure and calculations for tax purposes and file a tax return for your sole trader business. If you're in a partnership whereby 2, 3, or 4 of you get together and running a partnership, the partnership has to file its tax return as a partnership, and each of the individual partners need to file their tax returns because you're running a business. If you're employed elsewhere, and the question is, if you're employed elsewhere, is that money made considered part of your total money earned to determine if you're required to pay taxes? And the answer is yes. If you are working in the government agency or some private company, and you are running your sewing and your design business on the side, the income of the design business as a sole trader and your income personal and your income from the business that you're employed in come together to work out what your tax exposures are going to be. I repeat that. If you are working in for, let's say, the government agency or some private entity, and in that entity that you're working in, you're paying taxes, you're paying health surcharge, you're paying national insurance. When the time comes at the end of a year, you are required to file a tax return. Why? Because you have a sole trader business. And therefore, the income and expenditure of the sole trader business will now come together with the other income that you have and be able now to say, this is my total income, and therefore what your total tax exposure is likely to be. There are persons that the question comes whether there are persons that are hired on contract for service. NS can't be paid for anyone. But hold up. Let's clarify this for a minute. The question here is, you are, carnival season is coming, and you have to bring on some people to help you sew and do what you have to do. Well, the safest way to treat with that is one of two things. One is that those persons you bring on to help you at periods of time when things are busy, you're required, therefore, to pay national insurance for them, because you probably have them over a period of time, 2-3 weeks or 2-3 months, as employed persons in your sole trader business. What most of us tend to do is to simply say, oh, you come and help me out, and at the end of the week, you dash your $500, you dash your $300, whatever it is that you pay them, and that's it. That's not how it's supposed to be. I will give you a simple scenario. And one of my clients today, well, she's a client that's delinquent. The employees told her, she's a limited liability company, and the employees told her, don't bother about the national insurance now. Don't take it out now, pay us net. He's calling me now to say, what does she do? Because these same employees today want to go to national insurance now to make the claims. They cannot do that. If they do that, the claim issues will come back to her business, and she will now be held liable. There are persons, therefore, that if you hire them, and you hire them on a short-term basis, then you should be doing some kind of payroll for them independently. And when we go down the road in the presentation, I will show you what payroll records you need to keep for them once you're hiring them independently on a short-term basis with you. What if your partner does not work in Trinidad and Tobago? Oh. What if your partner does not work? The question is, I assume here that you're in partnership with somebody, and your business is registered as a partnership. All right, your business is registered as a partnership, meaning that that person and yourself are in partnership in a business. This is not a partnership relationship we're having. This is a formal business relationship. That person who is not in Trinidad will have its own liabilities outside, and that's why it's important that you have the income and expenditure, and whatever ways you share your profits, you will then file your independent tax return in Trinidad. That person, if not registered or not resident in Trinidad and Tobago, will have some exposure to them once you're remitting money to them overseas. All right, it gets a bit complicated because if you're sending money overseas, then they open themselves to tax exposures in whatever domain they're living in. Business levy, green fund levy. Right now, remember the information that we have and how we keep records is a filter that we're having. We're collecting information. Part of the information we collect is how much money did we make on a monthly basis? How much money did we make on a quarterly basis every 3 months? How much? Business levy and green fund levy is payable as a percentage of the income that you make gross. Business levy and green fund levy is a percentage of the income that you make gross. When you register your business, when you first register your business, you have 3 years without having to pay business levy. 3 years. After that, you start paying business levy based on the calculation of a 0.6% on the gross income. Green fund levy is 0.3% on the gross income. In total, it's 0.9% on the gross income. So it's really whatever gross income you make multiplied by 0.003 for green fund levy, multiplied by 0.006 for business levy. Take the gross income, and that's why from a business record keeping point of view, you need to keep the records that show how much money you make on a monthly basis. Month 1, month 2, month 3, total income multiplied by those numbers, 0.006 and 0.003, will tell me what my business levy and green fund levy is. I do that for the months of June. I do that for the months of March, June, September, December. And the extension question here is whether or not the liability to that $72,000. You pay your income taxes based on your taxable income. To arrive at your taxable income, deductions are made from your total income. To arrive at your taxable income, deductions are made from your total income. One such deduction from a personal point of view, from a sole trader's point of view, is that you have something called personal allowance of that $72,000. And that's why if you earn $72,000, net profit without any adjustments to be made, and I minus the personal allowances, I pay no taxes, zero. 72 minus 72 is zero. And that's why you pay no taxes there. The question asked here is, and they're coming in fast and furious, contract for service is a legal contract where you are hiring persons like sole traders for their service. Government does it all the time. The issue is when the government does that and you're a sole trader, you are supposed to invoice the government for the work that they're doing. As a sole trader, FashionTT has employed me to work on some of the costume design, or the Ministry of Culture employed you to say, well, design some costumes for them or whatever. You are invoicing to them. You are invoicing to them for your service. So yes, that's fine. The government does it all the time. Of course they do. And even if you go to claim or try to pay national, you cannot and ought not to be paying national insurance. I repeat that. You ought not, as a sole trader, be paying national insurance. They will not accept it. Now, here's the issue, and I repeat this again. If I was employed before where I was getting national insurance benefit or national insurance contributions, and I just lost my employer and I'm going as a sole trader, and I decided to go into design business as a sole trader, you can approach national insurance and they will allow you to make contributions for a short period of time, but you ought not to be making contributions as a sole trader for national insurance. I'll come and answer some more questions on the taxes, but let us look at something for me for a minute, right? What we keep in these records because we are gathering information. I wanted to gather information. I will address the question that is asked from Sarah with regard to the whole issue of the business. You're in one business as a director and you're in another business as a sole trader. How do I deal with it in my tax position? And then we'll go on from there and deal with how we calculate all these things. If I am employed elsewhere, if I am part of a limited liability company, I'm part of a sole trader business, we have to calculate your taxes for what you earn. If I'm a limited liability company or I work for the government, what you earn is what you get in salary or director's fees. That plus what you have earned as a sole trader business is where you're going to combine it in your tax return to determine what tax liabilities you may have. We'll come in a minute and I'll show you more information on taxes as we go down. Who uses the financial statements that we now have? The financial statements, once they are accurate and they're completed, stakeholders will use it. You as a business owner need to be fully conversant with what this income and expenditure means for you. Your staff could use it, your financiers, your bankers could use it, suppliers could use it to give you credit, your customers could use it. The government wants it because they want to determine what your exposure, your liability is to them. Auditors could use it for checking and verifying values, and of course, civil society can use it. So the importance here is I want to get you to a place to appreciate that the numbers that you have from your financial information, and the calculation of those numbers from income and expenditure is what you will now use to help you calculate your taxes, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So if I'm keeping records And we know those records, our certificate of registration, our bills, our invoices, and all those things are records. How would good record keeping help you? You need to understand that. Many of you are asking the question, and the question's being asked, and the question I want you all to answer now is, have you all been keeping good records? Do you have, if you have good records, then it helps you to make decisions. You can make decisions based on the money that's available, how much I should buy, how much I should sell, what I need to sell next month in order to be profitable. I need to manage my cash. I need to check to see how my cost structures are going up. And I need to measure whether or not the business is performing well. On the other hand, the law requires that you keep information. The law requires, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then, of course, you have to pay income tax. And of course, the bankers or your lenders will want to see your information. And here's the point for all of the questions that are being asked is, we have a lot of information based on the records, and therefore we need to look at what records need to be kept, how they need to be kept, and then use them to gain accurate information as to what your exposures will be for taxes, what your income would be for the performance of your business, and basically know what you're doing the right thing. So let's get into this and get into it in an interesting way now. I hope that you'll appreciate. We'll break at 10:30 for a little while. So but let's walk in very slowly now as to what records I ought to be keeping. What records I ought to be keeping. I would like to know what is the basic things I should have. The law requires that we have certain basic things. So what are the minimum legal requirements that any business, be it limited liability company or sole trader business, must have? Minimum. Before I deal with this question, the issue of what I should have, the question has come up: what do you suggest for the current situation for clients that do not have an online banking or who pay in cash because of long lines and increased exposure to this COVID-19? Is it being spent without document? Let me explain something. First off, let me deal with the issue of people's online banking. If you are in online banking, then you ought to have, when you have any transaction online, you should be printing the receipt. So that once you have the records and you do the online banking, print the receipt to have that for your records. But I don't have online banking. And we all want to run to the bank. You know what I've learned over the years? Initially, I was not inclined to online banking, but as life goes on today, we all need to come to the digital age. At the end of this presentation, I will give you 5 components to help you deal with what is happening in the environment today for your own business. But I will say this much: you now need to get online banking because we now need to come into the digital age, because you cannot be going and taking the time in the bank with the lines that I'm seeing in the lines these days. And therefore, you cannot be going for cash all the time over the counter. When you do these things from a business point of view, you should have a checkbook. So you have a record. You should not be swiping a card as a sole trader to say swipe a card and get your business money moving. Because when you swipe the card and you're a sole trader from your business account, you tend not to keep those records. And that's why the records become difficult to be kept. What ought to happen is, if you are spending money on the business, then you should have a checkbook. You should have a checkbook, you write your check. If you have a credit card, swipe your credit card, because yes, you can have the record from your credit card payments. Once you use a debit card, that piece of paper that you get out of the point of sale machine, it fades after a while. You have to tie that back to the bill that you paid, so that you have to tie that back to that record. And therefore you keep, all those records need to be kept for you to understand what is going on. I will deal in more detail with regard to this, the COVID-19 and the impact on business. But suffice it to say that you find going forward now that you would need to put in place digital capability to make your life a bit more easier. For those of you who have a sole trader business but do not have a bank account, I will explain to you how to go about getting your bank account. With regard to those who have the bank account, but they only give me a debit card, then I will show you how you approach the bank and get them to give you a checking account, yes, and convert that debit card to a credit card so that you do not find yourself swiping that debit card through the ATM on your sole trader business and not keeping good records for what is taking place. Let's look at the basic records you should have. The whole issue of client, the question is, some clients do not have online banking. The question is, if the client doesn't have online banking and paying cash, then the advocacy is when you get that cash, you need to get it to the bank. That's the advocacy, what I would suggest to you. The banks, based on the ATM machines, you can take cash to the ATM. Once you have, if you have that debit card, you can deposit money through the ATM. If not, as a business sole trader and you don't have the debit card, then of course you need to be putting that money into the bank over the counter in some way. All right, we'll come back and deal with this in more detail as I show you how we treat the banking issues. The basic books and records that you need to be keeping. One is a purchase day book, and we'll go through and work out what these look like. A sales day book. You want to keep a record of your expenditure, and you want to keep some indication of your stock sheets. Every person engaged in a business or profession must have basic books and records in accordance with the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. The Income Tax Act, Chapter 7501, specifies that these books and records that you see here would be the basic minimum that a business ought to have. I say this to say to you that that's what the law says. Now, for that, some of you have what I call, you can have accounting systems, and within the accounting system, all these records are kept for you in a computerized way. There are many, what I call accounting packages that small and micro enterprise people need to consider having. You have Xero, XERO, you have accounting for business, you have what we call Peachtree old days, you have what's called Sage 50 now. You have different levels that you can engage with to be able to do this kind of record keeping in an automated way. I want to repeat something I said. Going forward with your businesses today, you need to be looking at your business from a digital point of view. You cannot be doing all the work manually. In other words, you can't be cutting cloth, designing things, and doing all these things in a manual way. Because you need to be more productive, you need to put out more volume of product, and therefore you have to find ways in which you can gain efficiency. These books and records are what the Income Tax Act requires that any business person should have if you're doing a manual books and records. But you can access an accounting system via the internet. You can access or go to one of these accounting systems and acquire them for your business. You can have a cash book for your business in an automated way. And that way it becomes easy for you to manage because you can easily enter information into the system, push those relevant buttons, and you get all the reports that you want to get. Anyway, depends on the system that you're operating with, these reports come out of the systems automatically. Let me show you now in more detail what these books and records look like. Let's look at the purchase day book. It's a clear record of all purchases used to provide goods for sale. It is a clear record of the purchases that you use to provide goods for sale. So for those of you who are in the design business or sewing and making clothes of some kind, then you're looking at the material that you're buying. The format for books and records is simply the date, who your supplier is. You can have a folio number or reference number based on the invoicing that you're getting. This is reference numbers that you can track back to the invoice number or some folio, the amount of money you paid, and when you paid. So if you're buying from people on credit, then this book becomes handy because as you enter in the bills that you have on a daily basis, the persons who's supplying you some reference number so you can track it back to a document and the amount paying. Once you make the payment, you can indicate the date of payment, the check that you used to pay it. And when it's not paid, it's because it's outstanding in these three parts. When it is paid on the 14th, the 8th, and the 10th by these check numbers, then this is the fact that this is paid. So what does this book already tell me? I can go into this book at any point in time and be able to list those who are outstanding at the end of a month to know exactly who do you owe. That's what the purchase day book will tell me. At any point in time when I look at that book, I should know all the persons who I'm getting credit from that I owe them and what date I pay them, so you can track it back. The other book that you need to have is what we call the sales day book. The sales day book has a date, the customer name, the invoice, the amount of money, the sales type, and when you collect your money. If you're giving credit, that column is absolutely important. The question has been put. I have been keeping financial records on paper. Many of you should be keeping financial records on paper because this is the way of keeping a manual system. And what I'm doing right now is going through to show you how you should structure that manual system. The issue becomes, though, that sometimes with the manual system, it takes you too much time. And therefore, you should look at getting technology to help you do this work a lot faster, a lot more efficiently. Yes, there's a free accounting software on the system there. There's some ones for that are low priced. You're looking for cash book technology. I would provide that information to you. I will leave with you all before I finish my email address and contact number, and you can send that request and I will respond to you. Let me just track and get that research done. There's one called Cashbook. There's one called Zero, but Zero, you pay just about $10 US per month for the use of that system. So, but there's a free one. I will track that down for you and get that to you at the end. Sorry to touch back on banking question, but the record given by some banks through an Excel printout on your online banking when you use the debit card is not sufficient for keeping records. That is correct. It's not that sufficient. And I'll tell you why. When you use the debit card, to make purchases, you get a simple chit receipt. That chit receipt should be stapled onto the bill that you have so you know exactly what you paid it and what bill. When you go to the bank statement has no information on it other than the date the debit was made, what type of debit it is, be it a check or direct debit or whatever have you, and the amount of money debited and the balance on your account. That's all the bank statement has. So when the accountant comes behind you, to do the work, for him to understand what you did, he needs to be able to tie the bill to the payment, which is the chit coming off from the point of sale, and back to the bank statement. That has to be tied. That has to be in sync. He has to be able to tie the bank statement amount of money to the chit from the point of sale to the bill itself. And that is where the work comes in. Any accountant works on a time basis, or ought to be working on a time basis. The more time he takes to figure out what you are doing, the more money it's going to cost you. And that is why, from a record keeping point of view, at the end of a day or sometime in the evening, and you sit down and you have all these point of sale chits that you're playing up with, you should attach them to the bill that was paid and be able to take the bank statement that's given to you and tie it back to the bank statement and tick and check and what we call reconcile the bank statement so that you know that what happened on the bank statement is correct. That's why you keep in good records. QuickBooks as a technology is also useful, but there's a price to that. I would advise you, if you're looking at QuickBooks, try to look at the online version. I'll tell you for the simple reason that if you're using the online version, it means that wherever you go, you have access to your accounting system. But the technologies that I use for my clients right now, I use an accounting system called Xero. And therefore, on my cell phone or my tablet, I have access to all the clients I have. I could be talking to my client, go onto their system and see what they're doing, or at the same time, go onto my system with them and send them their invoice online just by talking with them. Similarly with QuickBooks, you can. So QuickBooks is also one of the applications that you can use. Look at QuickBooks. For those of you but you will have to have some degree of understanding to what I call dabbling QuickBooks. You've got to get that accounting understanding. A simple one to use is Xero, X-E-R-O, not Z, but X-E-R-O. When you use it, it's simple for you to use. Yes, they have a cashbook version, and you could only get a cashbook version is under $10 or $20 US per month, but you could only access that with a reseller from Xero in Trinidad. There are both resellers, myself included. Or you can take what I call the high-end version, that you could go online and do a trial and purchase it yourself via a credit card. I think that's $30 US per month. I meant I just want to clear these questions. I meant the laptop. FCB gives you an option to print out. Yes, because FCB and there's some of these online accounting systems, allow you to take the statement from the bank, as Xero does, on a CSV file and put it into your accounting system, and you're able to reconcile the accounting system to the bank statement. Yes, you can do that. They either provide it for you on a CSV file, so like QuickBooks or Xero, you can do that from the bank point of view. All right. And that is also that you can do that. You get this, you download the statement from the bank, bring it into your accounting system and use it. So that is also possible. What I use WhatsApp for, for accounting purposes, I'm not sure about that one. And the other question here before me is, okay, so that is what I'm asking. Okay, thank you. Good. Wave, I think Wave is another application. Yes, I've heard of that one. Wave, W-A-V-E. All of these accounting systems take these basic manual records and do that kind of work for you, because the accounting systems will generate for you. This is your sales day book, and you have something called in the accounting systems. You will get your debtors ledger. Your debtors ledger are people who owe you. From a manual point of view, what I want you to understand, for those of you who are not into the accounting systems, or from a point of view of the technology, and you're using a manual system, the format of how it is set up. This slide will be available to you. I've sent it on to FashionTT so you can have it, and you can design your manual records to suit these circumstances that you have before you. Some of you all have a point of sale in your business. You would want to summarize the daily sales and that you have coming out of the point of sale. You want to ensure that the cash register settlement reports tie back to your sales day book. You want to tie back. When I say tie back, you want to reconcile to ensure that what happens on the cash register is what you have in the sales day book. You want to file with the cash register's report, and you want to be able to reconcile the sales day book with your debtor's ledger. That, in a sense, is just on the sales side. It's a very simple record to be keeping. What most of you who are not yet keeping records for your business, the advice would be don't jump into an accounting system yet. You may do it for a year or for 6 months. Understand what the manual records are telling you. You don't understand accounting? No problem. Do the manual records that I'm indicating here to you, and you will begin to understand what they're all about. And then you can jump to the technology if you so choose. So the sales, from a sales point of view, you want to be able to record in that day book, and I go back for a minute, the date, customer, the invoice, the amount, what type of sale. I just want to stop and get back to you on this. The type of sale here is actually very, very important. To some of you, it could be plus size, normal wear, some degree of analysis of the sales that are being made so that you understand where your money is being made. Where you make most of your money is where you should spend most of your time. The analysis here, once you get into that kind of detail, so if I'm sewing clothes and I want to know that I'm sewing for, let's say, I'm sewing for male, female, and children, I can look at the way I'm making my sales and determine that I should focus my business on children because that's where I'm selling most of my clothes. That's in a simple form. And depending on what type of business that you're in and what you're doing with that business, an analysis of your sales can provide you with the insight and information as to where your money is being made and where you should focus attention, where attention is needed. Let's spend some time and talk about business expenses. Let's spend some time and talk about business expenses. The records that identify the details of expenditure. And I wanted to go back into what we discussed. We discussed here that some of you use your debit card. Even at this stage, I'm saying you want the bank to give you a checkbook, but you have your debit card. So you swipe at the point of sale to buy your supplies. That should be stapled against your bill and now be analyzed in a book. Let us look at that book. It gives the date, the particulars being what is being bought, from whom, a check number, it could be a debit advice, it could be either a check number or debit advice in this column, the amount of money, and then we're analyzing that expenditure. What goes to the day book for payments of suppliers, motor vehicle expenses. Then you have others. This other column can be further analyzed into utilities, other supplies, office expenses, bank charges, and loan payments. You can further analyze this. What are we doing? We are looking at expenditure. We are allocating that expenditure and be able to get out details, summary details of expenditure by category to determine what your expenditures would be. So let's go back where we're at. We know how we deal with our income. So we went to the sales day book. We record all our invoices and know who's paying us and when they paid us flat. So we're looking at the credit side, we're looking at the sales side. We come now and we're looking at the expenses, and we are saying that we want to categorize expenses. So there's a book, when you go to those stationery shops, if you're doing it manually, you can buy the 14 columnar or the 7 columnar books that they have with various columns in it. And you can set it up according to your date, particulars, check, amount, and analyze your cost. You can simply do this on an Excel spreadsheet. You can simply, for those of you with Excel understanding, you can create these things in an Excel spreadsheet as to what is your expenditure record, what's your sales record, and then we can combine them to give you the answers that you need. If you're doing these records on a monthly basis, you will know on a monthly basis and perhaps even day to day what your income is as opposed to your expenditure. With that, you know what your profit and how profitable you are. Let me just get into more detail on this. And excuse me if I want to shift from the PowerPoint presentation for a minute and bring up something that I want you to look at in more detail. I am talking to you about business. Come on, right. I trust you can see this. Let's make it a bit clear if you can. Right. Limited liability company or sole trader, I don't matter. The core business is either production, some provision of a service, some manufacturing, some sale. In the case of you all are design people, clothing people, sewing and stuff, manufacturing of some kind. Let us go through, and I'll take my time with this because I want you, when you finish, you understand it. Invoices are to be used for all services that you provide. be it a service, the supply of goods and services, you need to be generating an invoice to that person. You go to some counters right now, you go to some point of sale right now, people will take your cash and you go with the goods. You always try to get a bill. So somebody's dealing with you, you need to be able to generate an invoice for them. Again, you can create an invoice on an Excel spreadsheet. You can create an invoice on an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document and be able to provide that invoice to those individuals. Now, invoices should also read tax invoices where you are registered for VAT. I don't know how many of you are doing very well. You only need to consider VAT registration when your total income in a 12-month period is more than $500,000. I repeat that. You only need to consider VAT registration when your total income in a 12-month period is more than $500,000. The business expenses. All expenses claimed must be supported by proof of expenditure, be it an original bill or receipt addressed to the company. Yes, we get some sales invoices or sales receipts. There's a chip coming off a machine and that doesn't have your business name on it or anything like that. That's okay too. But in most cases, you should get a bill. If you go to a hardware dealer, if you go to even the gas station, they should put your car number on it. That evidence the fact that that is your bill. Some of your expenses relate to private use and must not be charged against the business. Some of your expenses relate to private use and should not be charged against the business. So sing that in for a minute because I don't want to complicate it, but I want to tell you all the expenditure that you can now put against your business. Let's go and let's deal with them slowly so that you understand how that you need to look at your business. A question has been asked on the issue of the PDB, which PDB is the Purchases Daybook. PDB is the Purchases Daybook, and we come back to that. All right, so let's look at the expenditure that you have, and I want to go through this very slowly with you because you need to understand something. You need to understand that you have expenses that you need to account for in your business.